This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze conversation with Eric Teplitz. And Eric, it's like I said to you when we were confirming today's podcast. Many of us walk through life and we're really not prepared for emergencies. We always say, well, it'll take care of itself. And as most of New Cleveland radio fans know, 2 weeks ago, it'll be 2 weeks tomorrow, my son called me at 9 o'clock at night. He was in pain, didn't know where the pain was coming from, waited 12 hours, went to the ER, and we got a call. He's having emergency surgery on Friday morning. So my husband and I both said, what do we do? And the answer was we had to book flights to Texas, not cheap. And if you're not planning that, my husband and I have been so proud. We've paid our credit cards down. We're carrying very little debt. And we can't book a flight because my credit card doesn't have enough credit on it. So as you and I have talked about, there are times in our life when we have to make a change and we can just pivot if we're mindful. But this wasn't a pivot. And I have to tell you that almost everything that I've learned in my communication courses, in preparing to be a coach, in talking to coaches, all went out the window as I got more and more hysterical as a mom who wanted to pack her bags and get someplace quickly. So my question to you, because I know you live a distance from home, if you were to want to go back home for an emergency or whatever, like, how do we tell people to be prepared? Is there a good way?
Where to start? Well, first of all, I consider California home.
Okay.
But I know what you mean. My parents live on the East Coast, so I assume that is what you're referring to. And I have to say that it crosses my mind with some frequency. They're not young and anticipating that something could happen at any point in time. For you, it probably was more of a shock because you don't expect that to happen to your kid.
Right.
An aging parent, perhaps, but your kid, so that adds to the kind of shock.
Sure.
I would imagine.
Exactly.
So I don't know how to speak to this broadly because I don't know that there's a one size fits all.
There's probably not.
Answer to that. I think you used the word mindful, which I think is great, and I know it's overused these days, but the more that we can be mindful and present in the moment and not captured by stories that are going on in our heads, right? Which are going on constantly. Stories about the past, stories about worries about the future. So it's a challenge to maintain your composure, really, I think, just during the course of any day, let alone when something comes up that is upsetting or shocking or demands your immediate responsiveness. But the best thing you can do in an emergency is be clear-headed. And so if you have a practice, and I have actually just been, I've just restarted my meditation practice, which I have lapsed on for quite a long time. And I've gotten several cues from, my life that, they come in all sort of shapes and forms and sizes, right? But like I had 3 sort of synchronous indications that I should start meditating. And I was like, okay, message received. and meditation is just a way to practice being mindful, and it's it never ceases to amaze me how difficult that can be. And that's why you practice it.
Right.
You practice it not to I mean, people meditate for all different sorts of reasons, and it has all different sorts of benefits, calming your nervous system, improving your ability to focus and concentrate. There are lots of interesting studies done about brain scans of meditators and what it does, the effect it has on the brain. And there are lots of even just anecdotal reports about benefits received from meditating. And I'm personally a big believer in whatever works. So I don't say everyone should meditate, because who am I to say that? I think it's something worth trying and exploring and experimenting with and seeing if you find it helpful. And if you do, great. If you don't, then do something else. I don't
E-
think there's, one thing for everyone. But this idea of mindfulness, of catching yourself when you're in the midst of a story, when you're actually not present to the moment, which is
Exactly. A lot of
unsettling,
it.
unsettlingly frequent, right?
Yep.
We will often have experiences, let's say eating a meal or going for a walk or whatever it happens to be, maybe even being in someone else's company, and we'll realize, you know what? I missed that whole experience. I was not even there. I was there physically, but I was off in my own I didn't hear a word that person said, or I didn't taste any of my food, or I didn't see any of the scenery around me. I was just completely lost in whatever was going on inside, right? I think that most people can relate to that in
Yeah.
some
Well,
form or another. And
and
now more than
that's
ever,
scary.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, and now more than ever, it's the demands on our attention and the endless array of very, very appealing distractions 24/7. It's unparalleled. Humans are not, we were, over Homo sapiens, they say, have been around for a couple 100,000 years ish. Humans in longer, millions of years. And we have not evolved for this time that we're living in. Like, our brains were not built for it. The change is happening so quickly in terms of technological advances and stimulation. I read something in a book recently that was pretty shocking, um, you know, idea. I don't remember the source, but the gist of it was that we are subject to more stimulation in 1 week, than our ancestors were for the course of their entire lives. Now, what constitutes stimulation and how was that, uh, you know, uh, arrived at? I don't know, but just the concept of it. If you just take it, broadly speaking, I think that resonates as true. We've never had this much coming at us and available to us at our fingertips, and so we're constantly being distracted. We're constantly taking in information. And our attention is constantly being hijacked
Oh, yes.
very deliberately, right? So it really takes vigilance on our part to cultivate mindfulness. I know that was a very long little
No, I mean,
rant I went on, but
you're right. It's a word that we use a lot. A lot of people I am finding are saying, you know, I don't understand what it really means. And it's like, well, are you present? Do you hear what's going on around you? Do you really see what's going on around you? You know, are you calculating that for your part in this, wherever you are? Um, it's interesting because uh, when we got off the airplane in Dallas, I don't know why I thought this, but when I got off the plane, I just automatically thought I had to go to the right. My husband was looking at the signs, and we had to go to the left. I had not looked at the signs, but there was just this inner pull that said, you go to the right.
hmm.
And so I started going right. He went left. And then he realizes I'm not there. And he's, going on his phone calling me. And I'm in the middle of people. And when I looked at the phone, thought, why is he calling me? And I realized he's not around me. I realized how dangerous that really
Hmm.
is, you know, because I wasn't listening to anything. Um, and so when I answered the phone, he said, I need you to turn around and walk towards me. I don't remember walking towards him. I
Hmm.
just remember being there and going, yeah,
Yeah.
like what's going on? And I've never been like that before, but I gave myself, you know, permission because I realized there was just so much going on in my head.
Sure.
I had no idea what was going on. Um, and I had to explain that to him, and he sort of looked at me like, you know, you could get yourself in a lot of trouble that way. And I said, you're right.
Hmm. Yeah. I
But
mean, look, and when you're under stress, it's, you know, I mean, you're that much more likely to be, distracted or not paying attention or not, not being mindful. But the reason I went off on that whole mindfulness speech and how it relates to dealing with emergencies is that if we can practice being mindful, if we can cultivate that, if we can like build that muscle, then what that allows us to do is in a an emergency situation or in a moment of stress, we can maybe catch ourselves and realize, okay, calm down. Let's come back from worst case scenarios. Let's come back from, worry. Let's come back from things that aren't actually happening right now. And let's come back to our body and this moment and realize that at this moment, everything's okay. I mean, I'm not saying like,
right,
I'm just saying like at the moment you're at the moment you are breathing. If you're aware of, if you have the presence of mind to realize that, then it means you are breathing and you're alive and you're able to respond. And the more you're able to respond from a contained and calm place. Now, I'm not saying like, I mean, obviously when something stressful is going on or when we're naturally anxious or worried about something that's, someone that we love is in trouble or something like, of course, all of that is completely normal and human. But even in the midst of something that stressful, you can come back to the moment and say, okay, what do I need to do now?
right,
And it help you can come from a clear thinking place. And it's quite possible to be, very clear headed. And I mean, I'm not saying it's not challenging, but it's possible to be able to just bring yourself to realize, okay, what do I need to do right this moment? What is the next thing I need to attend to? What, and it's just as opposed to just being completely hijacked and, at the mercy of your worst, you know, um, spiraling anxieties and stories and like, if you want to be effective, then it requires presence. It requires mindfulness. It requires, paying attention to the moment and realizing what the moment is calling for. So anyway, that's and I don't, I think it's important. I like that you said you gave yourself permission. Yes, we need to do this constantly. We need to give ourselves permission for being human, permission to not be perfect, permission to, uh you know, that's so I liked hearing that from you because
well,
sometimes it's easy to and do the opposite, right? And berate ourselves and condemn ourselves and like just be vicious to ourselves, which but if that were helpful, maybe you could make an argument for it. But
it's true. I don't
almost
know if any
always
time
that's
it's ever been helpful.
yeah, I'm not going to say never, but in most situations it probably is not at all helpful actually. So,
Well, and what I found was once my husband like got me to that spot, and he pointed out a couple of things. It was like, okay, I was back in gear. Um, and from that point forward, I found that I was paying attention to everything that I was doing because I
hmm,
knew that I was going to how how well maintained I was would be better for my son.
yeah,
And I knew that.
absolutely. Right.
And, I was hearing, what he was saying to me and I was paying attention to it. Um, and I found that all week. And the interesting part is, I've always said that, I'm a doer, I'm a pleaser. And I found myself doing and pleasing differently for the first time in my life.
Hmm.
I observed what he actually needed, and that's what I was willing to give because he needed it. It
He
wasn't about
being
whatever,
no,
helping
who are
him.
you referring to? Who's the he that you're referring to? Your husband or your son or
My son, my
okay, okay.
husband, he had to take care of himself.
Yeah.
And I think he figured that out, and there was no question about it. But even from the moment we got to my son's room and knew that surgery was delayed, I listened to what he was saying. He wasn't getting nervous about it. He was on enough meds at that point. Didn't make any difference. The only reason he wanted to go into surgery early was it was the first home game for the Guardians, which was going to be televised. And of course, he wanted to see the game. He didn't see the game. But I've been good about listening and being in the now with my clients,
Hmm.
not so much with my family. It's, oh, I'm doing for you. So you need an ice pack now. You need to get out of bed now, whatever. I didn't do any of that for a week. Oh,
Hmm.
you need an ice pack? Okay, it's the first day or so after surgery. Yeah, it's hard for you to get it. I'll get it. By the third day, when he was supposed to be moving around, um, the little suggestion was, well, if you can't reach it, I'll get it for you. And so a couple of times, because he'd have to bend into the freezer, okay, he really couldn't reach it. And he'd say, Mom, I can't reach it. Okay. So I was listening, but at the same time, I want people to know you can take care of yourself when you are under that type of pressure, helping somebody else out,
Hmm.
because they don't need you 24/7. There
Yeah, and
are
usually when we're scrambling to meet someone's every need, we're doing that more for ourselves, not for the person, right? We're
right.
trying to,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
So that's big. I mean, like that's you said first time in your life, and for a week. I mean, that's pretty significant. That's a pretty significant, shift from your status quo. What do you how do you account for that?
I didn't I wanted to be there for him, but at the same time, I didn't want my wants and needs to um, be used up, so to speak.
Mhm.
And so I knew that here I am sleeping on an air mattress, which is like 6 inches from the floor.
Mm.
Um, I knew I wasn't going to be getting good sleep. I knew that wasn't going to be comfortable, but I had to make it my I had to make myself comfortable there. And I had to know what my limitations were of basically getting down on the floor and getting up off the floor, as he would call. And so, I worked it out so that I wasn't getting mad doing
Yeah.
something I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's very clear thinking on your part. I mean, because you're aware of your intention and your goal, which is to help your son, and you had the presence of mind to realize that you needed to be in tip-top condition as much as you could
Right.
in order to effectively do that. And that means, not ignoring your own needs, right? So I think that's beautiful. And it also is, very logical too, right? I mean, it's very practical. So why do you think you were able to in that moment, if it was breaking a lifelong pattern of, you know, responding without paying attention to what, sort of sacrificing, putting aside any of your own, why or how do you think, you were graced with this ability to operate this way in
I
this
I think a
context?
lot had to do with the fact that I was in his environment, not mine. So if I was home, um, I obviously would know how to get around and find everything that I needed to find, and I would be jumping on it, you know, even before he needed it. but I was in his environment and I didn't want to be the overbearing mother because I knew that I
Mhm.
was going to have to leave at some time. And when I left, I wanted him to have some peace of mind that he could do certain things. So, you know, his biggest issue is getting in and out of bed, but he's 6'2", so I can't help him get in and out of bed. All I could do was the first night or so is sort of stand there and make sure he didn't fall out of the bed, tell him to scoot back a little bit more, whatever. By the third day, he was getting in and out on his own with some discomfort, but, you know, I wasn't running to him saying, "Oh, let me help you," because there was nothing to help, something he had to learn. Um, and I just felt like I don't want to leave his house having him think that mom did all these things. Now she's not here. What's going to happen to me? And instead, that's like I said, if he said he was going to go take a nap, he took a nap. I didn't ask how long. He was going to do whatever he needed to do in that time. Um, Again, when he lived at home and if he wasn't feeling well and he went to take a nap, and I knew I was making dinner at 6 o'clock, I'd be asking, "Do you want to get up for dinner? What's your plan?" I didn't. I just went with the flow.
So you
Uh,
attribute it to the difference in environment and being out of your familiar environment and being in his, and that is what cued you to respond in a different way. Is that right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Because in my
that's
home, we do things one way. Okay.
mhm.
I'll never forget the night that we walked into his place. He was still in the hospital. And my husband looked around and he goes, "How can you stand walking in here?" So my son moved into his apartment December 7th. Um, he's been so busy at work that he has unpacked almost nothing. He's been living out of boxes. Um, but I figured it out as soon as I walked in. I know why he hasn't done this. He doesn't really know where to put everything. It's
Hmm.
a totally different environment. And, if he were at home, he would say to mom, "Where do I hang this? Where do I put this?" And so all I did for him was I put his clothing boxes in his closet because that's where clothes go. And the kitchen items, either I put a lot of them in a cupboard there because he had duplicates. But he was so grateful for me just moving the boxes
Hmm.
because he said, "I come home from work and I'm overwhelmed." And that's when it dawned on me, I'm going to be leaving. He's going to have another week or two of recuperation. If we leave everything this way, not only will I not be able to handle it while I'm here, um, it will start to bother him because he wouldn't be able to maneuver around. So again, it's not like at home, if he left clothes on the floor and didn't pick them up for a couple of days, I was
Yeah.
picking them up.
Well,
It's my
also
home.
this is his environment and his responsibility, right? So
Exactly.
it's a fine line. And um, what's interesting is that we often project our own sensibilities on other people, right? Like we might not like to live in an environment that is, let's say, cluttered, but someone else might do just fine with it.
Yeah,
And if it's their environment, it's really not our place to say, right?
exactly.
But it is nice that it sounded like he did appreciate the gestures that you made, and but it's just a reminder that we're often reacting and responding to our own needs, even when we think we're helping someone else.
Yep,
And to just be like aware of, even just being aware of that can help us to make maybe more optimal decisions for everyone involved, right?
exactly. Um, and the other reason I think I made this change while I was there. I started coaching with my first client 2 days before this all happened.
Mm.
And I knew that we had a session coming up um, last Tuesday. That was going to be number 2. And I wanted to really uh, be able to give it my all and, propose, the right questions and whatever. And I thought, if I can't practice that myself,
Mhm.
then I don't deserve to work with this client. And it really was, you got to practice what you preach. And not that I'm preaching to my client, but my client has a lot of tendencies just like my son. And so it was
Yeah, projection.
easy. It was sort of like, you know what? I've been doing things for my son because I'm his mother, but a lot of things I shouldn't have been doing. And I shouldn't have been doing because he felt, and he actually explained this to me. He said, "Sometimes, Mom, um, I don't feel like a grown up." And I said, "Yeah, because I interject too much." And he goes, "And I understand why, but I do get mad at you, but then I let you do it because it's easier for me." So,
Yeah, so you're enabling it. You're enabling him.
I definitely was. And, you know, things have really,
But you
but
know what? Just the fact that you two had that conversation, I think is wonderful, right?
eh,
Because rather than just sort of be unconscious about it, you're at least calling it out.
right. And I feel
But
free.
both of you,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is it really, it has taken one of the bricks out of my backpack, so to speak. And it feels really good. And now I'm applying that in other places in my life. And, you know, when he got sick and we flew down there, I don't know what my expectations were, but in the beginning, it was all about me. I was running down there because he needed me. And because he needed me, I needed to be there. And I kept feeding on that until, you know, I sort of got lost in the airport. And my husband made me realize very nicely, you need to find your path.
Literally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was from that moment, it was like, I got to take my temperature. I have to see where I'm hurting.
Mm.
Um, and
Yeah. I think all this stuff starts with awareness, if you're not aware, you can't act differently. You can't make a different choice. If you are aware, you might still make the habituated decision or choice, or but if you're doing it with awareness, that's already a shift, and it's only from a place of awareness that you can even be be able to or make a decision, a different decision, a different choice. And so awareness is not the in and of itself like the answer to all of life's problems, but it's sort of that necessary first step. You have to become aware of something before you can do anything about it, before you can behave differently, before you can make a different choice, a better choice, or even just a different choice, and see what happens, right? And then you can decide, if it was better or not. But so awareness and mindfulness really is just another word for awareness. It's just being conscious of what's actually happening, being aware as opposed to being on autopilot. Really, that's all it is. It's not complicated. But
and
but that said, it's not easy. It's not easy.
well, but so many of us have been living on autopilot for a long
Mhm.
time.
And
Okay.
autopilot has its benefits. Autopilot is not inherently bad and wrong. We need autopilot in a lot of ways. Autopilot allows us to be efficient in the world. If we had to think, how do I drive again every time we got in a car, that would be not helpful. But at the same time, if we're in our car and we're texting, not good. Not good.
You are.
So, autopilot and awareness, they're not mutually exclusive. You could be driving and and you know operating a motor vehicle from autopilot because you've done it so many times and you're responding intuitively to things. Great. That's not bad. That's actually great. Um, anything that any skill requires practice until it's internalized. But once it's internalized, that doesn't mean you stop paying attention, especially if you're behind the wheel, of a couple 1,000-pound, machine that's going at I mean, like, this is just awareness, again, awareness, like, oh, you know what? I need to at least be paying baseline attention here because, you know,
Yeah.
there are repercussions to not paying attention. So yeah, autopilot serves us in some capacities and allows us to, in a way, really be at our best in a lot of situations. But it's you don't want to completely turn yourself over to autopilot. You want to be able to be aware, even if part of you is operating on autopilot.
Well,
So,
and it's like anything in life, okay? There are different ways of doing things at different times.
yeah.
Um, and again, if we are looking around and understanding that, um, you know, then you pick and choose which skill set you're going to use now. Okay. So, for instance, my son has been complaining about how horrible the traffic is in Dallas, all the accidents, all the construction. And as we were coming in from the airport, uh, I noticed that they have freeways on top of freeways. And one of my fears is height. So, midweek last week, my son wanted to go visit at his office, let people know that he is recuperating. I said, "Well, exactly how do we get to your office?" And he tells me this freeway to that freeway to. I said, "Mm-mm, I'm not driving, and you can't drive yet." Um, and we came up with an alternative. We took an Uber, which I am so glad we did, because on the ride back from there, it was rush hour, and I cannot tell you how many accidents I
Mm,
saw because people either they're driving on autopilot or they're doing something else while they're driving. And
mhm.
so I looked at my son and I said, I made the right decision. It was worth the money. Because I didn't have to deal with that craziness. I could sit back in the car and um, he said, "Well, what do you think would have happened if you would have driven?" I said, "I think I would have gotten to the first exit of the freeway.
Mm,
I would have gotten off and asked you to find me a back street way to get back to your place." And to me, I'm glad I did that because in the past, I've given into my certain fears I have with driving. And um, I'm probably the worst person on the road at that point. And so I knew I had to do what was right first for me and then for him. So,
mhm.
it's interesting how uh, if we're aware of what's going on, we can make some choices that will take care of ourselves. And, you know, to this day, when he calls me, it's like, can't believe you didn't want to drive. And I said, and I can't believe you wanted to see a hysterical mother in your car. So, hey, you know, um, if you want that, I can put on that show for you anytime, anywhere. But again, the reason I wanted to talk about this subject is we, at least what I'm seeing, there are so many people walking around in this world, um, and they aren't preparing for themselves or anybody else. Meaning, Monday, so today's Tuesday. Gosh, it feels like I've been home 2 weeks. I've only been home 2 days. On Monday, I ran over to the grocery store and I saw this woman who was trying to pick up this big, heavy thing of dog food. Now, I'm 5'5". She probably was maybe 5 feet, probably weighed 80 pounds dripping wet. She could not lift this up, but she kept trying and trying. And then she dropped it, and dog food went all over the place. And now she's on her hands and knees trying to pick up the dog food to put back in this bag. I went and got her some help from somebody, and I offered to help her when she was trying to lift up the bag, and she said, "No, no, no, I got this." But she reminded me of me.
Hmm.
I'm not going to think about it. I got to do it. I'm not going to ask anybody for help because I got to do it. Well, I don't think she had to do it herself.
Yeah.
And
And
I
that's a
know,
reflex, I think, for a lot of us, right? It's a
yeah,
reflex. It's sort of like a personal pride. We don't want to impose on people. We want to also be independent and, and it takes again to just keep being a broken record here for those old enough to understand that reference.
yeah,
It takes awareness. It starts with awareness to go, you know what? Like here, like this person is offering help and
yeah,
and I could either I could probably use it. But it is so interesting how it's like a reflex and a response. It's like an automatic response. It's a conditioned response, right? It's autopilot again.
yep,
And it's not, these aren't like life and death decisions. It's not like end of the world one way or the other, but it's just a reminder that even in these very mundane everyday situations, before we can make a a different choice from our pattern, uh, it requires awareness, and awareness is only helpful, you know. Um, and also, I mean, just to sort of add a tagline to that is that when we allow other people to help us, we're doing something for them too. We don't think of it that way. We think of it as we're imposing,
right,
but think of how good you feel when you help someone. It makes you feel good, like you
yep,
want to help them, and it makes you feel good about yourself to be able to do that. And we often deny people that experience out of just sort of, I don't know, personal pride or so yeah, awareness is a wonderful, important thing, I think, to cultivate, a muscle to build, because it just is it gives us more options, and it's empowering, and it also kind of wakes us up out of our zombie like sleep.
yep, it does. So you keep using this term, and I love it because I know it from my positive intelligence course. But you talk about the awareness muscle, and that's not a muscle in our arms or anywhere in our
It's a
body.
metaphor.
Yeah. Um, and I find that sometimes when I use that term, people will look at me and go, "Well, how do you strengthen that muscle? Like, do you do sit-ups?" And it's like, no, you practice. It's a
Exactly.
practice getting your brain to know, you know,
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to do to prepare myself.
Yeah, I use that metaphor a lot with a lot of different things. Courage is another one, like building up your courage muscle. You're practicing doing uncomfortable things, or, facing a fear. Like each time you do that, it's the equivalent of like a bicep curl for that metaphorical muscle. It means you're getting stronger at it. You're getting, you know, it's becoming easier for you with practice. It gives you, so it applies. And it never ceases to amaze me how easy it is to not be present. It's just, if you sit, just sit, if you, just sit, right, for 5 minutes and try to be still. I mean, we are increasingly like unable even to do this. We're reaching
Right.
for our phones at any moment that we're the slightest bit uncomfortable. Just reach for the phone, look at the phone. You know, I'm trying to not be like judgmental about these kinds of things. I'm not saying like you shouldn't scroll on your phone. Who am I to tell you what to do with, and
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with scrolling, but you know what? If you're doing it unconsciously and you're not even aware of it, then, 3 hours later, you're like, where was I?
Exactly.
And it's just, if you're aware of it, if you have some awareness, then you can decide, maybe I don't want to be scrolling. Maybe there's something that's more important for me to do. Maybe I don't want to get lost down the endless rabbit holes that are available again online. Those devices are, they're amazing and wonderful and unbelievably powerful, and it's incredible all the things that we can do with them. And they're also our worst enemies in a lot of ways. So I think it's only by building this awareness muscle
Yeah.
that we can even hope to take some kind of control over our lives and not miss them entirely.
Well, I look at it as I'm teaching my body and my brain artificial intelligence to some degree, or intelligence, however you want to put it, by practicing so that whatever that thing is I want to do will come
Easier.
more easy.
You're strengthening the neural connections. The more you do anything, the more you're reinforcing it. And if you think about it, I mean, all human beings, we all act on autopilot to a certain extent. It's part of our survival and also efficient functioning in the world, right? So what that means is that whether you choose them or not, we are all creatures of habit. We are operating, frequently out of habit. So if you accept that's true, if you accept that premise that one way or the other, like, then why not at least decide to have some say about which habits you want to try to reinforce and which ones you might want to try to weaken because they're not helpful or not serving you well. And that's how I think of it, is like the more you do anything, the more you engage in any activity, whatever it is, the more you're reinforcing it and kind of moving it to autopilot. So be thoughtful about what things you want to do in that regard. If you're learning a musical instrument, that can be an incredibly helpful thing. That's why people practice endlessly. Repetition is the mother of skill is a phrase that you may have heard. And that's because that's how we internalize it. That's how we put it on autopilot and make it automatic so that we can then do the next thing and not have to reinvent, not each time have to be thinking about it. So if we're, that awareness just helps our decision making, and the more we can be aware during the course of any given day, the more we can even realize, oh, you know what, I was just not even thinking, I was not here. And then you can just reevaluate it. Is this a pattern I want to, whatever I'm doing, is this something I want to, reinforce and continue to do and automatically, or not? And if it's not, then it's going to take some effort to kind of reprogram yourself, or to build other connections that are stronger and that are going to give us, the results and the habits that will benefit us and that we want to strengthen.
And that's the important thing, is what we individually want. And our want doesn't normally, or doesn't have to, equal our needs. And I think that's important. There's things that we need to do. There are things we want to do. And you don't want to be
delaying gratification is a great, again, muscle to build, because we're always wanting things. I mean, that never stops. So, but does it serve us to give in to all of those wants at every moment? No, it doesn't. So again, this is where, I mean, this is all sort of like, in a way, self-discipline. Like, this is sort of just, very basic sort of life skills, but they're not taught, and but they're the key to whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. I think, is just developing skills that are going to be helpful in giving you the life that you want, moving you in that direction, as opposed to, and if you want to get angry about it, because the anger can be good fuel, as opposed to just doing what your corporate masters want you to do. They're you know, again, social media, for instance, and is deliberately addictive. You are not weak for succumbing to it. It is designed to take advantage of your biochemistry, and it gets you to do things that they want you to do so that you will buy things they want you to buy. Do you want to be just a pawn? Do you want to just be, you know, a slave to other people's wishes for you? Or do you want to try to take some, you know, ownership of your life and authorship of your life and make your own decisions? And I'm not saying that, like, you know, we all do a combination of these things. It's not one or the other. I mean,
Right.
you know, so, but, you know, and again, it just repeating endlessly, it all starts with awareness. You have to be aware before you can make such a decision. And the less aware you are, the more you're forfeiting your life force, and the more you're giving up your own autonomy and your own life, your own actual life that you're not being present for, that you're not actually experiencing. So this is, I
Well,
mean, this is deep stuff. I mean,
it is. And sometimes we got to get deep. And I really appreciate it because I'm excited about getting stronger in certain areas that I never thought I would do.
hmm,
And what I also like is the reflection I'm seeing on the people who are closest to me, that they're seeing the changes and they are tweaking themselves. And I don't even think they realize what they're doing,
hmm.
but I can see more smiles, more acceptance of, look what I just did. And
And the best way to encourage any behavior in other people is to model it yourself, right? I mean, telling other people what to do is immensely ineffective.
you,
And if you're, you know, demonstrating a certain way of being and people can see the results of that, then again, consciously or not, they may want to adopt. They may say, "I'll have what she's having."
yep. A famous line. I love it. Well, another podcast in the books. Um, we will get together again next month. For many of you who are living in nice, warm climates, try to enjoy the outdoors because
Mm,
there's a lot out there. I came home to cold weather after being in the
mm.
80s in Texas, but tomorrow it's supposed to be in the 60s. So I'm going to cut my day short and get outside tomorrow. I think that's a good idea.
Enjoy. Thanks so much,
Thank
Karen.
you. It was great again. Have
Same
a good
here.
one. Bye
You
bye.
too.